Everybody, episode 783 of the podcast that is serving America, the Torres Sports Podcast. It is Wednesday, October 25th, 2023. People, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody is having a great day, and I hope everybody is ready for a quick but jam-packed episode of the Torres Sports Podcast. Here is what you need to know about today's show. We're going to open the mega story out of college football. We're talking Michigan, sign stealing, the scandal. On Friday, we talked about, it's no big deal. Everybody steals signs. Well, when you hear the details that have come out over the last 24 to 48 hours, I'm sorry. I don't know how you could say this is no big deal. We'll get into all of that. We will then switch gears. YouTube will have a little bit of a bonus, maybe element to the show. But for those of you listening live on podcast, what we're going to do is jump right into college hoops. We are now like 10 days away from the start of college hoops. And so what I want to dive into is the biggest stories, in my opinion, in the sport this season. We'll give you 8, 9, 10 headlines to watch as we are so close to college basketball. And I'll give you some details on where you can find some other college hoops content from your boy Torres. With that said, there is no more time to waste. So let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, listen, it is the biggest story, I believe, right now, this second in sports. It is the Michigan football sign stealing scandal. And it's interesting because when I talked about this on Friday, I was, it's not often that I am surprised by a reaction to a story from the general public. I'm not always right. I'm not always wrong, but I usually feel like I have a pretty good idea of what the temperament and what the tone of people's feelings are whenever we get a major story like this. Well, I was dead wrong because when this story came out on Friday, everybody steals signs. This isn't a big deal. I didn't even know you couldn't send coaches on the road to scout opposing team. And so I get it. I took a little bit of heat for that take because I do think it's a big deal. But I bring it up because over the last 24 to 48 hours, we have gotten some really big new information. And I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you, but if you think this is no big deal, I really can't help you because this is a big story with wide-ranging consequences. And I do think there is one very important thing that, frankly, not enough people are talking about. Now, in terms of the story, everybody knows the details, right? Not even an assistant coach. He's a low-level staffer named Connor Stalions. I don't think it's necessarily relevant to the story, but he was in the Marines. I guess on his LinkedIn page, there was something about, being able to decode and decipher whatever. But the bottom line is, story comes out Thursday into Friday that a low-level staffer is involved in a sign stealing investigation involving Michigan. And so what I want to do is get into some of the new information. And it starts with the bottom line of why this is why this is even an investigation to begin with. Because as I said, to lead this segment, it is not illegal to steal signs. I would guess that virtually every staff in some way, shape, or form does some element of this. What is illegal, though, is to send coaches on the road to scout opposing teams. And let me just tell you, let's get to some of the new details because to me, this is a big deal. Okay, so this is what we learned over the last 24 hours, most of it from a report from ESPN, although also The Athletic did a very good report on this as well. What we found out is that Connor Stalions, a low-level staffer that makes about $55,000 a year, over the last 2 years since getting hired as a full-time assistant coach at Michigan, 2 years into 2022 season, beyond whatever, is that he has purchased tickets to 30-plus games across Big Ten country, most under his name, some under other family members' names, whatever. He sent them to different people. Sometimes he's bought one, sometimes he's bought two. But what's important is 30-plus games, all, as best we can tell, future Michigan opponents, sometimes multiple games over the course of the season. This directly from ESPN. I want to read it so I make sure to get it right. One source told ESPN Stalions bought tickets to 5 different games at that school over the past 3 years. Another said it was 4 games over the past 2 years. A third said it was 9 games over the past 3 years. Some of the purchases, as I just said, were single tickets, others for multiple people, whatever. So first of all, You got a guy making $55K buying tickets to upwards of 30 games, sometimes upwards of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games over the course of multiple seasons. This is not normal behavior. This is not what every staff is doing if the ESPN report is accurate, and I have no doubt that it is. Beyond that, and I think there's a couple more important notes to this. One, all of the ticket purchases all essentially follow in the same path. All ticket purchases are made on about the 45 to 50 yard line. All ticket purchases are elevated, raised up so that you have a clear view of the opposing sideline. And it's worth noting that because of current surveillance, we already know, apparently, according to both ESPN and The Athletic, we already have proof that the people that were using those tickets are seen using their phones to take video. Now, again, I understand it's 2023. Everyone at the stadium uses the phone at some point. I get it, Michigan fans. I understand. This does not feel like picking up your phone to take a selfie. That is not what this feels like at all. It feels like it's a little bit more complex. 30 tickets, bunch of different stadiums, bunch of different teams, multiple games. I'm sorry. This is not normal behavior. And let me also add this. Kind of an interesting note for the people that say, oh, it's all one big coincidence. Connor Stalions bought multiple tickets on both sidelines for last week's Penn State-Ohio State game. This story broke on Thursday, and surprise, surprise, those tickets were not used. So again, what we cannot deny is at the very least there is a pattern of behavior. A guy that frankly probably can't afford tickets is buying tickets. He is giving them out. We have video surveillance of people in those seats taking video with those tickets. And then, oh, by the way, they're all happen to be on the same sideline, same area, opposing sideline, etc. Right? So if it's just for friends and family, he didn't get them in the nosebleeds, and it doesn't feel like that's the case. I think there's a couple other very interesting elements that came out on Tuesday as well. One, first of all, is that there were multiple videos pulled. Now, a lot of them, admittedly, were from Ohio State accounts or Ohio State media or whatever. They're doing their job just like everybody else. And what I would say is this guy does not have the normal communication patterns, if you will, of a low-level staffer. There's multiple videos shown, and maybe it just so happens that it's all a coincidence. But one, the first drive of the Ohio State game last year. Now, admittedly, Ohio State scored on that drive, so that is worth noting. But the first drive of that game, you can see Ohio State audible into something, and Connor Stalions, again, not even a position coach, not a coordinator, he starts going crazy and signaling something. The entire sideline starts signaling it. Michigan changes his defense. Like, this is not normal behavior for somebody who's not the coordinator. Speaking of which, multiple videos, him talking to Mike McDonald, basically being his right-hand man, the Michigan coordinator 2 seasons ago when Michigan made the playoff in 2021. Then in 2022, him talking to Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator, a year ago. Again, not normal behavior on game day for a low-level staffer to have the ear of the defensive coordinator. That is not normal. I'm sorry, Michigan fans. Don't try to sell me. It is not normal. And so when you add it all up, something is not right here. And I would also say this too. And I said, and I know I've said it 2 or 3 times, but I do think it is worth repeating here, is that this is a guy that was making $55K a year. This is not a guy that can just afford to buy tickets upon tickets upon tickets upon tickets for just friends and family. Like, I think that's an important element of this here as well. Just so happens to buy tickets all over the Midwest, just so happens to buy tickets for teams that all happen to be future Michigan opponents. It feels like more than a coincidence. And again, this feels like a bigger story. And the reason it's a bigger story, and I want to get to this, I want to make sure that I hammer this home, because I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I'm the only one that sees it. It is a bigger story, not because it's sign stealing, because it is an in-depth, elaborate plan to go to opposing team stadiums and get intel and advantage that you can't get by being in the stadium on the other sideline, as in if you're playing them as an opponent, and you can't get on TV, you can't get on game film, you can't get on anything. And so this is an first of all, just broken NCAA rule. And I'm not Mr. like, oh, you got to play by the NCAA rules. I get all that. I get the NCAA rule book's outdated. But at the same time, they did break a rule. But more importantly, and this is the part, if you take nothing else out of this, I think this is an important part that I haven't heard anybody else really talk about. We now live in the sports gambling era of sports. And everybody's taking money from sports books. I get it. We have a partnership ourselves. Like that's not new. That's not a new piece of information. But I just bring it up to very simply say that the one thing you cannot do, and why this is a big deal, and why the Big Ten is investigating, and why the NCAA is investigating, is because you can't put the integrity of the game into question. If you're a Michigan fan, you don't have to go far down the road. Jamison Williams just came off a suspension for the Detroit Lions. Why? Because he bet on something somewhere. Like he was suspended because there was an integrity issue with him playing in the NFL. Same with multiple Detroit Lions. You can agree, you can disagree, but everybody has to be extra cautious in this era. Iowa State are missing players because of betting that was tracked, that was deemed to be some sort of integrity issue. And that is exactly what this is. Michigan fans, I don't know how much Jim Harbaugh knew, how bad it really was, how much Connor Stallions really picked up, but anything that calls into question the integrity of the game, that gives Michigan an unfair advantage, and I'm sorry, sending your assistants all over the Midwest to scout teams that is a big deal. And so now, I'll be blunt, I'm just curious to see what happens next. And this is one I don't know that I have a really good answer on, because this is so unprecedented. This has never happened before that I know of at the college level. Now, we had, Spygate in the NFL, but even Spygate, that was using cameras in the stadiums, all this, all that. This is going on the road. This is coordinated. This is multiple stadiums all over the country, buying tickets, giving them out, taking video, getting it back. You can't watch the videos that surfaced on Tuesday and say it's no big deal. Everybody does this. If it is, find it for me. Find me the Ohio State sideline. Find me the Penn State sideline. Find me the Michigan State sideline. Find me the Alabama sideline of a low-level staffer getting in the ear of Jim Knowles at Ohio State or whomever, Kevin Steele at Alabama. It doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. And so this is a big deal. You can't tell me it's not. And I'm just fascinated to see what happens next. Now, again, I'm not smart enough to know what the NCAA is going to do, because the NCAA marches to the beat of its own drum. And this is also a unique circumstance because Michigan was already being investigated for other stuff. By the way, Michigan fans, don't tell me, oh, the NCAA is out to get us. The NCAA is not out to get you. Harbaugh was stupid with the cheeseburger stuff, then basically lied about it. Like, he was so bad in that investigation. He brought on a lot of the problems himself. And then this is a big deal because everyone in the league knew about it. So the NCAA isn't out to get Michigan. It's that everybody got pissed off because they're egregiously breaking the rules. And so we'll see what happens next. It is worth noting, Jim Harbaugh can deny. And by the way, I'm a Harbaugh guy. For the record, I picked Michigan to win the national championship. I said 3 weeks ago they were the best team in college football when everyone's else talking Georgia or Texas or whoever. I've said since day one, I think Michigan's the best team in the country. But at the same time, you cannot tell me this is nothing. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with Jim Harbaugh. Remember, they have coaches' responsibility rules, which basically say if you're the head coach, even if you didn't know, you should know. It's obvious the NCAA and Jim Harbaugh are not getting along, and so we will see what happens from there. Ultimately, I don't know if Harbaugh – I still think Harbaugh is going to coach every game this year. I think there's going to be a cloud, but when they win the way that they do, people will move past it. The initial report came out Thursday. Everybody had the hot takes on Friday. Then Saturday, they destroyed Michigan State. And it was kind of like, they didn't need to steal signs on this one. They're just way, way, way better than Michigan State. So we'll see what happens as time goes on. But at some point, Michigan is going to be punished for this. We'll see what happens. And I stick by what I said on Friday. I really do believe this is Harbaugh's last year. I'm not rooting for it. I love him. He's good for college football. He's good for Michigan. He's good for the Big Ten. But it just feels like stuff is starting to add up, whether he knew, whether he didn't know, good, bad, whatever. It's just starting to add up. It's starting to have a little cloud over the program. And listen, if he wins a national championship, if he wins a third straight Big Ten title, he beats Ohio State for a third straight year, he is going to have his suitors. So we'll see what happens. But please, 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 please do not tell me this is no big deal, because it is a huge deal for the reason that I mentioned. All right, everybody. I'm back. Gonna be back. I do want to switch gears, and I do want to talk about a topic that we discuss quite a bit here on the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. That is Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes. And it's funny because every single time that I talk about Coach Prime on this channel, one of two things happens. One of two responses is what I get. There's some of you, oh, I love Coach Prime. Torres, keep talking about it. You're the man. You're great. Blah, 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 blah. No big deal. You think I'm great? Who am I to tell you no? But then, of course, there's the other side that sits there. Oh, Torres, you talk about Coach Prime too much. What are you doing? There are so many interesting stories in college football. Nobody cares. Stop talking about him. To which I would say, you might not like Coach Prime. You might not like Colorado. But there is no doubt in my mind that there is no program in college football that more people care about than Colorado. Now, you might hate watch them. You might dislike Coach Prime. You might love Coach Prime. You might love Colorado. But people care and people are watching. And I saw two stories today on Tuesday that blew my mind when I saw them and proved beyond a reasonable doubt. I sound like I'm a judge here, or a lawyer or a prosecutor or whatever, that people love Coach Prime. The first one, this blew my mind. Okay. So I think a lot of people know, but I'm from the East Coast, but I live in Los Angeles. And what I could say is I actually think LA is a very good sports town. The Dodgers are always selling out. The Lakers, that speaks for themselves. USC football, now that in theory they're good again, although the last couple of weeks been a different conversation. But I bring it up because there was one team that for whatever reason just has not been able to break through and resonate in LA, and that's UCLA football. And it's crazy because I think Chip Kelly is a really good coach. Martin Jarman, their AD, is a really sharp, smart guy. But I bring it up because for whatever reason, UCLA football just does not resonate. For whatever reason, people just do not go out to the Rose Bowl to watch the Bruins play. I bring it up because that was the case at least until this week when the Colorado Buffaloes come to town, okay? So I saw this and it blew me away, okay? So UCLA football last week, okay? So again, I live here. I can definitively tell you, most UCLA home games, you can walk up to that ticket window 5 minutes before kickoff, get any seat you want in the building, okay? I bring it up because I saw this last week and there was a new narrative, new twist, new narrative to it on Tuesday. And that's this. You know, the Colorado game against UCLA is not only sold out, it actually sold out over a week ago. In other words, people are so interested in watching Coach Prime, Shador, all the guys in LA, that this game sold out at a stadium and for a team that never sells out and essentially cannot give away tickets. Went back and looked it up. This is really interesting. This is just, I believe I saw that this is just the fourth total sellout since 2016. The fourth total sellout since 2016. And I believe during that stretch, this is now 7 years, this is expected to be at minimum the second most attended game at the Rose Bowl for UCLA football since 2016. That's 7 years, 7 seasons. I know there was a COVID year, no fans, whatever. The bottom line remains, that is insane for a 4-3 team, and it is further proof just how much people care. Oh, by the way, how about this for a twist? Saw this on Tuesday. UCLA might actually, there's a part of the stadium that is, there's a tarp during home games that might actually get taken off. So now people are saying it could be 70, 75 plus thousand, proving again, people care. And for people to say, oh, well, UCLA is just getting good. No. I went back and looked it up. Cheapest ticket for Saturday at the Rose Bowl for this UCLA game, $125. And for anybody that says, oh, they're there to see UCLA. UCLA the following week or a week or two after plays Arizona State at home. Cheapest ticket is $21. So you got to pay 6 times the value for Colorado 4-3 as opposed to Arizona State just a few weeks later. So it is clear people like Colorado. It's clear that people are invested, that people are interested. And by the way, it's not as though it's an easy trip for Colorado fans. So, if people think that, oh, Colorado has this crazy group of traveling fans, you're dead wrong. It's about a 2-hour flight. I think it's easily got to be about a 7, 8, 9, 10-hour drive. So it's not like they're playing, Stanford or something that's a 6-hour drive, that's a 5-hour drive. No. It's not Colorado fans. It's people in LA that want to see Shedeur, want to see Coach Prime, want to see the Colorado Buffaloes. I also saw this on Tuesday afternoon. I thought it was really interesting. The Athletic actually put out an updated list of the most watched games in college football of the season, okay? And the reason they did it, first of all, it's just something people care about, but it comes after the Penn State-Ohio State game, top 10 matchup, 2 mega brands, Big Ten, big noon kickoff on Fox just a few days ago. That was actually the number 3 most watched game of the year. Congrats to everybody involved. I don't want to say it was a great game, but congrats to Ohio State for winning. Do you know that number actually essentially paled in comparison? It was pretty comparable. I don't want to say it paled in comparison. Pretty comparable. As I said, it was the number 3 most watched game of the season. You know what number 1 was? Colorado versus the Oregon Ducks. And so the Athletic put out the top 15 most watched games. How about this? Colorado, Oregon is still number 1. So we are deeper in the season. Games feel bigger. Games matter more. The number 1 game was still Colorado, Oregon. Ohio State, Notre Dame was number 2. Ohio State, Penn State was number 3. Ohio State, big national brand. Everybody loves. Okay, whatever. Same with Notre Dame. Same with Penn State, by the way. Bring it up because you know what number 4 was? After Colorado, Oregon, and those 2 huge Ohio State games. Oh, I don't know. How about Colorado State, Colorado? 10:30 Eastern time kickoff featuring Colorado State. It's not as though Colorado State's a national brand. It's not as though it's the biggest program in college football. The number 4 most watched game was Colorado State. Number 5, Florida State, LSU. This one is amazing to me. Florida State, LSU. Remember, this was the opening weekend of college football. It was Labor Day Sunday, so a holiday weekend, everybody's home, and it was a standalone game. There was no other sports on that night, 9.3 million viewers, less than Colorado State, Colorado a few weeks ago. By the way, you know what was right behind LSU, Florida State? It was Nebraska, Colorado. So 2 big brands, a formerly big brand against Colorado. Oh, by the way, after that, it's Texas, Bama, or Tennessee, Bama, Oklahoma, Texas, Bama, and then Colorado, TCU. Colorado, TCU is then followed. I'm tripping over my own words here. I'm tripping over here. But the bottom line is, this is what you need to know. 3 of the top 6 biggest games all featured Colorado. That would be the Colorado-Oregon game, which is still the most watched game of the season, Colorado State, Colorado, which was number 4, and then Nebraska, Colorado, which was number 6. Then at number 11 is Colorado, TCU, and then at number 12 is USC, Colorado. And so I just bring it up. This is what I'm here for. This is what I do. This is what I'm about. I'm here to help you, right? The old saying from Jerry Maguire, help me, help you. The next time somebody's complaining to you about Colorado, they talk too much about it. People care too much. Blah, blah. Why are they always talking about Colorado? Well, it's because they have, how about this? 5 of the 12 most watched college football games of the season so far. That's more than Bama, by the way. That's more than Ohio State. That's more than Michigan. That's more than anybody. And also, the tickets are flying off the shelves at the Rose Bowl this weekend. Listen again. People are going to try to tell you they don't care about Colorado. They are dead wrong. They are interested. They are invested literally financially, and they are watching. 5 of the 12 most watched games are Colorado this year. And the one thing I keep going back to is this. What if, and I think this is going to happen, what if Coach Prime actually lives up to his promises, right? Like, what if he actually builds this into an elite program? If he gets those defensive linemen, those offensive linemen, and builds this into a top 15, top 20, forget number 1, number 2, number 3, but top 20 program in the country, top 10 team in the country. Imagine what the ratings would be like then, because they're already amazing. And the team isn't even playing very well this year. Bottom line, it's a fascinating thing, a fascinating trend, proves that people care. And I'll tell you what, people will be watching that UCLA-Colorado game. For those of you in Los Angeles that will be attending on Saturday, enjoy the game. Wish I could be there with you. But boy, oh boy, is this a fascinating one. Thank you, everybody, as always, for your support of the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. And we have a major announcement as legal sports betting is now in the state of Kentucky. That is right. The Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube has partnered with DraftKings Sportsbook and the DraftKings Sportsbook app. And here is the best part. DraftKings has an incredible offer for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod who are first-time customers with DraftKings. This is the deal. Here's what you need to know. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Bet $5 on any game, just $5, and you get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you use the promo code Torres. That's right. It's that simple. Again, first-time customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Bet $5 on any game, pro, college, any sport you want, and get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you use the code Torres. Thank you to our new partners, DraftKings Sportsbook. Thrilled to be working with them. Take advantage of their offer now. Item day. I'm back. Gonna be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. And I do want to go ahead and wrap with a little bit of college hoops. First off, I know for those of you who are kind of new to the show or been listening the last couple weeks, yes, on these Wednesday shows, we've kind of looked ahead to the big games in college football. This coming weekend, if you look, there aren't really that many big games, so we'll do the full preview on Friday. But I do want to talk college hoops because incredibly, we're about 10 days away from the start of the season. Next week, you get your nights to yourselves. Then college hoops starts, and I'm pretty excited. Got a lot of big things planned. Should mention, by the way, if you want more college hoops coverage, the College Hoops Daily Pod, Zach Kroll hosts it. He's part of the Aaron Torres media family, but I have joined him over the last couple weeks to preview the SEC, the Big East, and the ACC. We'll do all the big previews there. So make sure and check it out. College Hoops Daily Pod, if you want some more college hoops coverage. With that said, let's get into what I deem to be the 10 biggest stories in college hoops going into the year. Again, a little bit of a cheat sheet. I'll try to be quick on these. You know, Torres, sometimes I'm good at this. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes it goes 8 minutes. Sometimes it goes 38. But let's get into my top 10 storylines. And the number one storyline bluntly is who is number one going into the year. Because it's interesting. I think some years you can legitimately argue there's one team that deserves the top spot. Last year, I actually thought North Carolina justifiably should have been the number one team. It fell apart, and we'll get to Carolina in a second. But in my opinion, I thought they were deserving of that spot. They returned everybody off of a team that played for the national title the year before. This year, I think you can make a case for three different teams. And ironically, it is the three teams at the top of the first AP poll: Kansas, Duke, and Purdue. Okay. From the Kansas perspective, I think everybody knows the big narrative there. Hunter Dickinson's star transfer comes in from Michigan. Think he should probably be up there with Zach Edey as the National Player of the Year frontrunner. Really talented player. And the thing about Kansas, they got guards for days, right? Kevin McCullough is back. He's a little bit more of a wing. DeJuan Harris, he's been a starter since that national championship run 2 years ago. They add Nick Timberlake, a transfer from Towson. So really talented team, not very deep. Also, Elmarco Jackson, a five-star name that you need to know. Kansas, think you can make the case for them. Duke would actually be, if I had a pick, Duke would be number one. I know whatever, John Shire, how good is he really? I don't know. I just know that they basically return everybody. And what's cool about Duke, basically it feels like maybe NIL helped them, but they had three different players that I believe would have been drafted if they had gone pro last year. Kyle Filipowski, Tyrese Proctor, a guard, and Mark Mitchell, a wing. I believe all three of them would have been somewhere in late first to early second round picks. Instead, they come back, and I think that's great for college basketball. So you add them in with Jeremy Roach, multi-year starter, another elite freshman recruiting class. This team has a chance to be really, really, really good. And then Purdue. Listen, Purdue, you can argue it, you can debate it, and we're going to get into them in a minute, but they return everybody off a team that won the Big Ten regular season, the Big Ten tournament. They beat Duke. They beat Gonzaga during the regular season. Tournament did not end well, but think you can make an argument for them at number one. Let's get to the number two storyline, and that is Purdue. Because the argument with Purdue, the fascinating conversation with Purdue is pretty straightforward. 2018 into 2019, Virginia loses as a 1 seed to a 16 seed. They bounce back, win the national championship the following year. And everyone say, can Purdue do that as well? I'm here to tell you, I don't really see it happening. And listen, there's no disrespect to Purdue, but the bottom line is, like, people forget about that Virginia team. They had three guys that were NBA caliber players on that team: Ty Jerome, Kyle Guy, and DeAndre Hunter, who had been hurt in the previous year's NCAA tournament. Well, Purdue was at full strength. And full strength just wasn't good enough last year as they lost as a 16 seed. And so I bring it up because I don't see it from Purdue. NCAA tournament is about guard play. It's about difference makers. It's about having NBA caliber players, which we'll get into in a minute with UConn. Purdue has Zach Edey, and their guards I don't think their guards are good enough. And I think they justifiably should be the preseason favorite in the Big Ten. But the NCAA tournament is about being able to win multiple different ways, multiple different styles, big, small, fast, slow. That's not Purdue. That's not who they are. They can win one way doing one thing. And I don't think this team is built for the tournament. So I don't mean to rain on Purdue fans' parade. It's October. You want to enjoy the season. I just don't see it. I really don't. Let's get to the number 3 storyline, and that is, can UConn become the first team since the Florida Gators in 06 and 07 to go back-to-back? And I know I'm the UConn guy, and I know I'm a homer. I will say this. I'm not picking it to happen, but I think it absolutely can. Because for me with UConn, it comes down to this, okay? I believe the NCAA tournament is about 2 things and 2 things only. It's about guard play, and do you have NBA caliber players, okay? UConn last year, 3 guys on that team that are on opening night NBA rosters. Jordan Hawkins was a lottery pick. Andre Jackson is with the Milwaukee Bucks. And Adama Sanogo made the Chicago Bulls opening night roster. They lose those guys, but they still bring back 3 of their top 6, Tristan Newton, Alex Caravan, Donovan Clingan, and they add the number 3 recruiting class in college basketball behind only Kentucky and Duke, headlined by a McDonald's All-American in Stephon Castle. And so when I look at UConn, they have the guard play. Tristan Newton, 5th-year senior, Stephon Castle, a McDonald's All-American, lottery-type talent, and they add Cam Spencer, a transfer from Rutgers. But 2, when you get to the NCAA tournament, do you have dudes? Do you have NBA guys? Well, Donovan Clingan is a projected lottery pick, the 7'2" center from Bristol, Connecticut. Alex Caravan, a redshirt sophomore, is projected by some as a late first, early second round type talent. And Stephon Castle, as I said, is being projected in most mock drafts as a top 15 pick. And so UConn checks the boxes for me. Now, it's going to be hard. They're not going to sneak up on anybody. But can they win 2 in a row? I absolutely believe so. That is the number 3 storyline to me. Number 4, it is the Kentucky Wildcats. And I think the question that a lot of people are asking, Kentucky, are they actually a little bit underrated coming into the year? And I know what everyone will say, oh, Cal's teams are never underrated. They stink. Well, Kentucky is ranked 16th in the first AP poll. That is the lowest that any John Calipari team has been ranked. And I think they are a little bit underrated. For people who missed it, they did a summer tour in Canada, played in an event called the Global Jam. They looked really good. And the thing that stands out to me, they have elite NBA level guys across the board. We just talked about it with UConn. For Kentucky, it's DJ Wagner. It's Justin Edwards. They have 3 guys in the front court that are projected NBA draft type guys. Zvonimir Ivicevic, who we talked about a lot on this show. Aaron Bradshaw and Agana Onyenso, who are both hurt. And so you can sit there and say, freshmen don't win in college basketball. Young players, that's not true. That's the dumbest narrative going. Zach and I talked about it on our preview show. Here's the truth. Freshmen win if they're good enough. Who was the number 1 team in the country last year? Alabama, most of the year. They had 3 of their top 5 scorers were freshmen. Noah Clowney, Brandon Miller, Jaden Bradley. Duke returns 4 of their top 5 scorers. 4 of their top 5 scorers last year were freshmen. A couple of those guys are coming back. They're all NBA type talents. And oh, by the way, last year, Duke, guess what? They won the ACC tournament. They were a 5 seed in the NCAA Big Dance. And so I bring it up because I believe this team is talented. I believe they're going to play fast. I love Oscar Tshiebwe, but I think Kentucky is better without him. And yes, to answer your question, I believe in my heart of hearts that Kentucky is underrated. Let's get to number 5. It's the North Carolina Tar Heels. And listen, North Carolina, baby, we know the narrative from last year. Started number 1, missed the NCAA tournament. By that metric alone, you can argue it was quite literally the most disappointing season in college basketball history. Now, the good news is some retooling in the offseason. I talked about it in the offseason, but I do think it's interesting. Hubert Davis has sold, basically, I don't think he said it publicly, but certainly privately. It's become clear. Everybody there is selling that Caleb Love was the problem at North Carolina. Is it fair? Is it unfair? I don't know. But what feels to me very interesting is a couple things. One, Armando Bacot, RJ Davis, both multi-year veteran players elected to return. To me, if the program was falling apart, if Hubert Davis was completely inept, those guys would have either gone pro or they would have transferred. Hubert Davis, to his credit, did very well in the portal. Harrison Ingram, former McDonald's All-American. Paxton Wojcik, as my voice is about to give. I've been talking all week. Paxton Wojcik, a transfer from the Ivy League. Who else? Who's the other big one? Cormac Ryan, transfer from Notre Dame. So they did well in the portal. They added a 5-star freshman in Elliot Cadeau. And I look at this team. Hubert Davis did everything right, and we will now see the results. Again, you got to win. You got to win early. You got to win when it matters. But am I buying that, yes, it is possible that, oh, by the way, Caleb Love was the problem? I am. North Carolina is number 5 to me. Let's kind of stay on the Caleb Love theme. Let's go out west to Arizona. Let's just talk Pac-12, because Pac-12 football is having the revival of a century. Everybody in the Pac-12 is good. So the question becomes, can basketball have the same? The answer, no, absolutely not. But I do think there are 3 very intriguing teams in the Pac-12. One is Arizona. Combination of some returnees, Umar Ballo, multi-year starter, Kylan Boswell, point guard, along with some very high-profile transfers. Caleb Love from North Carolina, Keyshawn Johnson from San Diego State, Jaden Bradley, who I just mentioned, played at Alabama last year. From the Arizona perspective, I think they're going to be good. Not great at the three-point shot, but I believe that, one, Keyshawn Johnson, anyone who listens to this show knows I am a fan. I believe he is special. I believe that he bought into the system at San Diego State, but has more to give. And the early returns out of Arizona, he might be a little bit better than everybody realizes, except for Torres, because I've been telling you that since April. As far as Caleb Love is concerned, I truly believe this is a guy. I'm not making excuses, but I think the fresh start will be good. And it feels like he kind of knows this is his last chance. If he doesn't get it right at Arizona, his career could go sideways, because he was at Carolina. It didn't work. Went to Michigan, academic, whatever. You got to make it work at Arizona. As far as the rest of the Pac-12, UCLA is interesting. We talked about it at the end of the summer. They've added 4 very high-profile international players, including multiple guys projected as first-round picks. Most notable one, Adai Mara, 7'2" center from Spain. Burka Birkenspiel, I believe is how you say his name, a 6'8" wing from Turkey, and a point guard from Serbia. Very interesting team. I will say a couple of those players arrived very late. Been kind of told it's been a process to get them going. Remember, UCLA is on the quarter system, so they didn't even get to campus until September. Most teams have their players back in May. So they'll be interesting. And then finally, USC. Listen, one, we all hope Bronny is feeling better and that he's able to play. Safety first, obviously. But USC is very interesting. Certainly the best backcourt in this league with Isaiah Collier, potential lottery pick at point guard. And oh, by the way, on top of that, Boogie Ellis, multi-year starter there. Fascinating to see USC. USC and Arizona, to me, are the favorites. UCLA is interesting. I know people like Colorado, like a couple other schools. I think there's a big gap after those 3. Let's keep it going. Storyline number 7. Does that sound right? Storyline number 7. Gonzaga. Is Gonzaga like slowly starting to die a little bit? Because I think they might be, okay? So we've talked about this before, but Tommy Lloyd leaves for the Arizona head coaching job. Tommy Lloyd was their lead recruiter, international guy. If you've noticed, they have not had a lot of big recruiting wins since Tommy Lloyd left. Now, to their credit, they beat Tommy Lloyd head-to-head for point guard Ryan Nembhard, a transfer from Creighton. But beyond that, the international pipeline has largely dried up at Gonzaga. And frankly, Arizona's roster right now looks a lot more like a Gonzaga roster from 2, 3, 4 years ago. Big, athletic, skilled, all that, international. As opposed to Gonzaga, which is just kind of a couple dudes, Ryan Nembhard, Graham Ike, not a lot behind it. And to me, it is interesting. This is now year 3 for Tommy Lloyd at Arizona. Every year you start to see the program just regress just a little bit. Not falling off a cliff. They're not terrible. But they had about a 5-year run where I believe every year they were capable of winning a national championship. This does not look like a championship roster to me. Let's wrap with a couple more storylines. Number 8. You know where I'm going here, people. You know what I got? You know what that tingling inside of me is? That's some big Rick energy, baby. That's right. My boy Rick Pitino is back at St. John's. And listen, I've talked about it all offseason. This is so big, so huge, and it's bigger than I even thought it was going to be. First of all, the team he's fielding is good. They just beat Rutgers in a charity exhibition game the other day without 2 starters. Jordan Dingle, probably their best guard, didn't play. RJ Luis, an NBA draft prospect at the wing, did not play. And they beat an NCAA tournament caliber team with Rick Pitino as the head coach. But 2, this just feels so interesting, so fascinating, so big. They play Michigan at the Garden the second week of the season. Cannot wait to watch. Oh, by the way, did you see what Rick Pitino said? We talked about it in Aaron Right, Aaron Wrong a few weeks ago. They're trying to schedule a game against Duke next year at Arthur Ashe Stadium, a 30,000-seat tennis facility. Torres might have to fly into New York for that one. That one's going to be so big. They're playing Bama at the Garden next year. This guy has completely flipped this program. It has so much energy, and I'm fascinated to see where they land in the Big East. Now, the Big East is really good. Creighton's really good. Marquette's really good. We talked about UConn. But don't give up on St. John's, baby. My boy Big Rick energy. I think I willed it into existence more than anybody, and it is finally here. A couple more thoughts. 1, number 9 on this list, it's the SEC. The SEC is loaded, okay? So we've talked about Kentucky. Tennessee was picked to win the league. They're really good. They bring back everybody of note except for Euros, I guess. They're a really talented team. I know everybody likes to criticize Rick Barnes. You understand the last, 3 NCAA tournaments that have been played, last 4 NCAA tournaments that have been played, they've made the second weekend twice. And last year they did it without their starting point guard. Well, now Zakai Zeigler's back. They're going to be good. A&M returns everybody. Arkansas, I think this might be Eric Musselman's most talented team as long as Trevin Brazil is healthy, and he looked healthy in their exhibition a few nights ago. Bama will be good. Auburn will be good. What I think is the difference this year, though, that second tier in the league is just, there's no nights off. Remember, Chris Beard. Chris Beard is the head coach at Ole Miss. Now, they have some eligibility issues with some guys, second-time transfers, but on paper, that could be an NCAA tournament team, especially if they have everybody eligible. Mississippi State just lost their leading scorer, Tolu Smith, which is a bummer, but they made the tournament last year. Don't forget about them. Missouri made the tournament last year. Florida had another good year in the portal. Does that equate to something? Georgia had a good year in the portal. Does that equate to something? SEC is loaded. I think this is an 8-bid type league. Said on the College Hoops Daily Pod, I believe the NCAA tournament teams, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Kentucky, Arkansas, Bama, Auburn. That's already 6 right there. Then I believe 2 of the 4, Missouri, Florida, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. I believe 2 of those 4 will be in. That's 8 NCAA tournament teams from this league. Don't call it a football conference anymore, baby. That basketball product is very good. Finally, my number 10 story. Listen, you can go a lot of different directions. Big East is going to be really good. We just talked about them with St. John's, Creighton, Marquette. Big 12, we barely even touched on, probably at least on paper, the best conference in college basketball. But where I'm going to go, something a little bit different, is I'm going to go with the fact that I believe in my heart of hearts that we need to appreciate this year. Because listen, much like college football, it's the last year of this sport as we know it. A year from now, there's going to be no Pac-12, or at least it's going to be Oregon State and Washington State, and that's pretty much it. A year from now, the Big 12 is going to be even bigger and probably better with Arizona State. Colorado is up and down. The ACC, don't forget, the ACC is going to have Stanford, Cal, and SMU. The SEC obviously adds Texas, Oklahoma. So the point I'm trying to make, this sport is changing fast. I didn't even mention the 4 teams from the Pac-12 going to the Big 10. UCLA, USC, Washington, and Oregon. I think UCLA and USC will be pretty good. Washington and Oregon may need some help. I just bring it up to say this is the last time this sport is going to look the way it does, so enjoy it. I'd add 2. I think we're going to hear probably in the next 6 months that when we expand those conferences, we're going to expand the NCAA tournament. Because if you think that the SEC and the Big 12 and all these power leagues are going to add a bunch of teams and not expand the tournament, more teams but same tournament bids, I don't see it happening. That's something to keep an eye on. All right. Hopefully that was a good little reminder of everything that happened in college hoops last season and the offseason, but it is time for me to get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. If you could, Aaron Torres Pod, give us a quick 5 stars. Just a quick 5 stars. Give us a little review. That really would help. That really would be great if you don't mind. If it's not too big of a deal, that would be amazing. If you're not subscribed, please make sure to do so. As I said, make sure to follow on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Pod on TikTok. Hate to brag. Taught myself TikTok this weekend, and I'm pretty freaking good at it. Pretty freaking good. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And that's basically it. Time for me to go. Time for me to get out of here. We'll be back be back on Friday. Good show Friday. Friday, we will definitely be previewing the weekend in college football. Plus, who knows what's going to be happening at Michigan by then. Shout out to Torres. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Redick. You F-head, unblock me, bro. I'll be back Friday. New episode, Aaron Torres Pop.